Assalamu alaikum and good evening from New Zealand. Thank you, Mr. Abbas, for your introduction and indeed to the Expo for the opportunity to present. It's a terrific event you have underway. I was fortunate to spend some time listening to some of the sessions yesterday. And one of the things you learn when you're involved in this industry is the way to actually implement the changes we talk about is to spend time in forums such as this. So thank you for what you've done. And I want to also congratulate the person who curated this session that we're part of, because I think that you'll see at the end, the four of us have really covered very different dimensions of the topic we have in front of us, which I hope you'll find is useful. So I lead a smart cities enterprise business based in Auckland, New Zealand, although we've worked in Singapore for several years and have practice underway in one of the countries, of course, China. I'm involved in a number of other enterprises, as you'll see, the Smart Cities Asia Advisory Organisation and also the Australia and New Zealand Smart Cities Council. So let's start with what we think smart today is, and I'll take you through just 5 sections as I respond to the opportunity to talk about the role of the city in smart innovations underway in home and office. And so that slightly perhaps awkward topic seeks to kind of connect the activities that are happening in homes and businesses to the role of the city. We start with a definition, and I know there was a lot of definitions yesterday. I'm not going to get into that in the same way, but what I am going to talk about is the multifaceted nature of the way the smart city idea expresses itself today. And I know that you had dialogue about this yesterday. You'll see on this slide the multiple elements in which the idea of smart practice is incorporated. And I think, my perspective is that although technology is often a key enabler of a smart practice, you can do smart things that are technology adjacent to, and I'll speak a bit more about that. I'm focusing, I guess, principally on buildings and smart home, but I start with this multifaceted overview to give you a sense really of the fact that there's a range of ways now that smart practices involve our lives. And in fact, in the case of many citizens, particularly citizens in cities, they're somewhat blissfully unaware, for example, within the water systems and the energy systems, the amount of digitization, in fact, that has been underpinning those practices and hopefully helping them make more efficient and more cost competitive for quite some time. So it's multifaceted, but it then is multidimensional. So if we move away from the assets that we're talking about, the way in which those assets are used, of course, is complex and involved. And I'm highlighting just 4 of the 8 areas in this slide. So a green city is a key driver for the sorts of changes that we should be looking to do in our homes and in businesses. Energy and utilities, of course, is a fundamental driver for activities in homes and businesses. Smart buildings, of course, are about the way, in a commercial sense, we can get more optimization. And I'll talk in more detail about that. But within our homes, it's not necessarily about having the newest, smartest fridge. That may be part of what you do, but it's certainly about making sure that you're linked into the energy optimization tools that the better electricity companies will provide today. And if you're not getting almost real-time reporting from your energy company about your home energy use, that's a conversation you should be having with them, because that's certainly best practice now. And safety. We think about public safety from a public realm perspective. We think about public safety where large numbers of people gather. But of course, in most city surveys around the world, safety, actually personal safety, is often the #1 concern. And so there are key elements of the smart cities practice which perhaps have been traditionally owned in the public space by cities, which are increasingly forming part of how we can kind of curate our homes. And again, I'll speak some more about that. So if that's what smart now is, what is smart sustainability? because this is really a significant direction of travel for smart city practice now. And there are three broad functions to what I see sustainability is, and the first is resilience. And haven't we learned something more about being resilient over these last 20 months? Resilience, of course, covers a multitude of practices, and there's an important way in which technology can help our homes and our enterprises be more resilient. When I go through some case studies and some of the diagnostics, I'll talk specifically about some examples. But here I want to focus particularly on building climate resilience or sustainable resilience for your practices. And there are two key elements to that: mitigation and adaptation. So in our homes and businesses, we should be keeping an eye on what the cities are doing, to the extent our cities are leaders, because it's true to say that there are some cities that aren't perhaps leading as much as they could in the climate space. But there are cities groups around the world, the C4 Cities Club, really, of best practice organizations who are leading what is the best way for cities to respond to climate change. And in terms of the mitigation practices that they're employing, homes and businesses need to be plugged in to what cities are doing. We should be consulted, of course, as part of the city practice, but as I'm sure you know, in most countries and cities, there tends to be relatively lower engagement at the city level on city planning. But some of the practices, particularly in transport, energy, and energy efficiency, are elements that we should be connecting to our business planning, our business redevelopments, and also what we're doing within our home. We move then, of course, to adaptation. And that's really around the things that we're doing to manage the risks, the specific action we're taking. And there's a range of elements, of course, that cities do at a planning level that we need to be adopting more locally. The second big category here is this idea of adaptation. So pulling it out from the resilience field and looking from a smart cities lens about what we mean by being adaptive. And you can see there's really a raft of specific initiatives that are underway in cities, but also increasingly in residential developments and in businesses. I can see one in the middle there, grey water recycling opportunities, particularly in more denser urban developments for new residents to have the option of buying a property that actually has a grey water recycling system integrated into its use. We have an early example of that here in Auckland, New Zealand. And then there are other things that can be done from a business point of view in terms of urban farming. As I mentioned, we're based in Singapore for a couple of years, and urban farming in a country as small in geography terms as Singapore, of course, is using urban farming as a way to supplement the challenges that it has, in fact, securing food, but also adapting to the environmental challenges that it faces as well. So there's a bit of a roadmap, I think, within here that is a mix of things that may have been driven initially from cities or may have come from businesses or indeed maybe came from individuals that forms now an adaptive framework for all to act. And lastly, of course, we can't forget value adding. So there have to be, when we're applying these resilience and adaptation techniques, when we're particularly investing in technology, to think about what's the value add that we're getting. And so these are a couple of, I think, ways that I like looking at it. On the left-hand side, you can kind of see the infrastructural picture, I suppose, that shows you in a house, for example, what are the devices, what are the tools, what are the applications that should be considered as a reference frame. I think when we're planning any home renovations, and I guess for people who perhaps have been fortunate enough to have the time and maybe a little bit of discretionary funds, that's been an activity in COVID times while we've been locked down. But how many people with their home renovations think about the Smart House Plan? How many people would have a look, take a plan like this and think about the different tools they have in their house and what they want to be made smarter? And on the right-hand side, we've got perhaps a little bit more user-friendly coming from the UK, where they actually tie, again, the activities to the potential opportunities, to the potential benefits you can gain. Savings, for example, in terms of house price, of course, is an investment that you're making, but then savings in terms of what you get from it. Specific savings from elements such as solar panels. So this is a way that if your developer or the handy person you're talking to is not coming up with these kinds of ideas, you've got a couple of tools here that you could use. From a more commercial sense, of course, it's much more involved. And there really is quite a sophisticated degree of experience and capability now in terms of business management systems to help underpin not just new design, but also adaptation, because of course the vast majority of buildings in the world are not new. They're older businesses. And what they need to have, again, is a map like this that looks at the particular asset and thinks, well, what are the ways in which we can adapt the connectivity? We can add sensors if we're not currently in phase. Sensors are, they're number one here because they are invariably the easiest thing to add to get the greatest value from, both in terms of gathering data that Dr. Ahmed, of course, was talking about its criticality, but also tracking all manner of other pieces of information that are useful for business planning. It follows through then to the analytics. You've got to have the sensors in place to be able to kind of start crunching the data. And then that helps, of course, inform decision making. So if those are some of the sort of sustainability elements, what if we drill down further are some of the smart elements that need to underpin this? And in the home, and indeed it's going to be the same on the next slide with business, it's of course the Internet of Things tools. So these are this is the interconnectivity we're talking about from the different assets. And we start, I suppose, at an asset level because that's easier for us to think about. And this is one way, if we look at the house on the left-hand side, of thinking about how we can kind of prioritize potentially what the opportunities are for introducing IoT. Interestingly, it starts with energy management at the sort of closest to the house. Possibly smart entertainment is the priority in many houses, particularly those who have children. Energy management, of course, is there because of the cost. But that's a way of thinking about how you could prioritize the introduction of Internet of Things technology into your house. And of course, you don't need your own local area network necessarily. You can just start adding tools to your existing Wi-Fi network. And in terms of buildings, I mean, what I think it's often useful to kind of look at is the gains, the actual tools. So what are the benefits that we'll get in terms of how we're managing light, how we're detecting problems, water, gas problems more readily, how we're better equalizing temperature management or controlling humidity. So dashboards such as this, I think, on the right are a way where we can kind of plan our Internet of Things addition to business enterprises in a way that tracks and engages people who are there. More on the business front, of course, as I mentioned, because it is much more complex and involved, is the tools like this. So breaking really the building down to the different functional elements. And then on the right, and I'm sorry that's a little harder to see, some of the particular tools that you'll need to use to track the temperature, to control the ventilation systems. You've got to always take the plan on the right, if you like, the architectural plan, and overlay it with the reality. Because unless you're in the fortunate position of building a brand new building, almost all of us are going to be working in environments where we're adapting. And so having some kind of a narrative flow that shows what the elements are, what the hard elements are, and how they're delivered, how temperature is currently tracked, what's the way in which brightness is managed, what, if anything, is done with respect to controlling waste, how is that tracked? That's another tool that we can use. Specific use cases, of course, are something that gets people interested. On the left-hand side in Singapore, you see an example of what's available there for people in Singapore to use to manage their home utilities. They can do this remotely, so they can preset, for example, their air conditioning to come on and come off, and they can get an alert if something perhaps is a little bit untoward with the machine, they can also, of course, get information on savings that are being made. So that's now something that's quite readily available in Singapore housing environments. And on the right-hand side, we're talking about an organization, but it's obviously a city. And these are the different tools that someone from a citizen perspective could be thinking about. Okay, so street sensors get me information. What a problem that I'm seeing, and then I can stay involved. Graffiti, for example. So these are good examples, I think, of, particularly if you're putting a business case up, having this, so you can kind of focus on exactly what it is that you're talking about. Underlying all that, of course, is the architecture, and these inevitably have to be quite complex and quite involved. And from a city side, on the left-hand side, you need to be looking at the functional elements, and then what are the IoT enablements that need to be employed to be able to deliver the sorts of use case benefits ultimately we're talking about. So look, this is quite involved, and I hope if you're seeing that, you're not thinking, oh my goodness, because what this is a menu, and much like a big menu in a restaurant, you're not sitting down to eat everything, or most of us aren't. But what you want to be apprised of is really, I think, the scope of what's available on the buffet or in the kitchen, so you can then start prioritizing and focusing what your investment and decision making will be on. And then at a greater level of granularity, of course, we've got the infrastructure, and I think other speakers talked more about this. I won't go into detail, but this takes the connection through to the actual hardware architecture, the specific systems, specific devices, application systems, and the cloud format that you'll be using to deliver this. So we've got the smart happening, but what does that mean? What does it actually mean? And what it's got to be able to mean, and the proof points in your business decision to adapt your home office or to invest in your business has to be around getting better decisions. It's got to be around more efficiency. Efficiency is often the driver, right, for what we're doing. That's perhaps the sizzle that attracts the investment to begin with. But there are many other benefits that kind of come from smart that have to form part of the articulation of the business case and the decision-making process. Greater engagement's one that's often missed. It's obviously harder to measure, but if you're talking about big workspaces, that's certainly an element that needs to form part of what's driving the smart decision-making. In the case of engagement, we're talking about citizens easily reporting incidents via the app I mentioned that cities such as Vancouver and many others have, receiving automatic service alerts. So in other cities, they have apps where you can sign up in your street and you can get an alert from your city about events. If someone, for example, files a planning report, they want to build a skyscraper next to your house, you get an alert about that on the phone because you've signed up to the app. Someone puts an application in to have an event in your street to get a permit for doing something, you can receive that information that way too. So those are some of the engagement opportunities that can come. And we're all trying to get smaller feet, aren't we? We're all trying to manage the footprint issues that we have. And of course, part of the benefit from being smart has to be about that. It has to be, again, delivering a dashboard that's showing on the emissions side, on the electricity side, transport, whatever our priorities are. And look, most cities in the world, transport is the largest carbon emitter issue that cities can control. Cities are obviously at the behest of governments most of the time in this area, but transport often is one that's controlled locally, and it often makes the most significant negative contribution.
Sorry, Mark, we're going to have to wrap it up in a bit. We're going to be falling behind on the panel discussion.
Terrific. Look, thanks so much. Just to close, so McKinsey did a phenomenal study actually drilling down to the specific value. The top line shows you the value opportunities across the top. And the last slide, so that's very well timed, is to show where we're heading up. And we're heading up, on the top left, in a brand new building environment that's being built in Singapore. So that's one of their new eco-cities that's underway. Down the bottom, we've got an adaptation of a commercial building in New Jersey, but we've got to also be smart in the old world too. And bottom right is Vienna, one of the older cities in Europe, which is one of the smartest. So that's my run through some of the role I think that cities can play in terms of driving greater smart innovations in the home and in the office. Thank you.